networks. And so we want to talk about data centers and their importance in the development of blockchain networks. We've got Rob Charles, the CEO of Goldfingr, who is going to be our moderator for a panel that includes Juwan Lee. Juwan Lee is the CEO of the NexChange group. Joining him will be Mr. Andrew Fitzmaurice, who is the CEO of Templar Executives, and also Danny Hayes, the co-founder and CEO of TerraScale. Bienvenue à Monsieur Lee, Monsieur Hayes et Monsieur Fitzmaurice avec Rob Charles du Goldfingr.
My name is Rob Charles, founder and CEO of Goldfingr and Greenfingr. I'm here with some of the top people in the world right now in regards to data centers, infrastructure, and blockchain co-founders and CEOs, co-founders of TerraScale and CEO of TerraScale, which, Danny, you guys started one of the, out of the ashes of the pandemic, have made leaps and bounds over the last year. We like to talk out and talk a little bit about TerraScale and where you guys came from and how you've progressed in the last year and plus.
So great. Thank you, Rob. Yes, I'm Danny Hayes, the CEO of TerraScale, and we are a new green tech company, strategy company coming out of California. We were founded actually during the pandemic, mainly because it was a great opportunity that we saw to take on our competition while the competition was standing still in the beginning. And it turned into a very explosive, dynamic company kind of along in the journey. And, I don't even know if I would repeat what we did just because it was just so crazy. We founded TerraScale actually in Beverly Hills with Philip Eggen, Sohaila Alpani, and myself. And we had just a very little bit of money that we sold some stocks, Sohaila and I, to start the company. And our key initiative and driver was to take a data center, small or big, and couple it with green power, but it really be green powered. We had worked on, some of us had worked on projects before at different, levels, and by no means owning or running a data center company. But we knew we could hire two, great experts. And we were in conversations with one of our good friends back then, Colonel Mark Schomburg, and he had built a lot of the big government data centers around the world. And we then hired one other person at that time, Mike Coleman, who had built more data centers than anyone in the whole world, literally of like 414 with Google and Yahoo. And Mike, we just advertised with one guy to get the top, two talents that we could to at least be able to operate and build a data center at minimum, no matter where the market took us, and that we could structure sort of the other talents that some of us had. Some of us had talents like Philip Eggen in tech, like he understood blockchain. He was the only guy that I'd ever met that had like exited some type of blockchain type company. And we knew that blockchain, like cryptos and things like this, not only would need green powered data centers really bad, but that would be a big part of the future, right? Whether people buy the coins or not, it's going to always be present in the market in some degree. And all those really are is just big data centers, right? And so solving the green initiatives was always at everyone's core, because we felt that the planet is now at a stage to where it's borderline catastrophic if we don't all really, in all our respective businesses, make changes. And so Philip Eggen, myself, Michael Coleman, and Mark then took it for the rest of the year and so on. And then we, met with you, Rob, and others. And actually, Rob, and I've done a lot of finance, sort of, but I've never been funded faster than with Rob. I think we borrowed like $2 million and literally got approved and funded in the beginning of it in like 2 or 3 days, borrowed as much as we could, got out in Reno and developed some land, which ended up going through the roof. So we got the land at basically, $3 or $4 million, of real money and pre-development costs. And then that land ends up being $88 million in value down the road, which was quite helpful. And then a few contracts. We now are about to sign this huge MOU with Fujitsu, many months down the road of hard work, that allows us to be the exclusive renewable data center operator of them globally, which is just fantastic. So that allows us to sort of stay in line with the PPAs, 20 years, and maybe upgrade the data centers from small data centers, what they call kind of the edge play, to the really big ones like we're building out in the desert. And we're not sure how big it's going to be, but it'll be really, really big, because you need a lot of space to put all these solar panels up, all this kind of stuff. It's a really neat project. So, but it all began at a card table, and we're really happy to where we got here, and our friends that we have, and we've done a good job of marketing and stuff. But we're just a company at the end of the day, just trying to be more green in what we do and influence others to do the same. That's sort of our gig.
Congratulations, Danny, on that. But let's back up a second. So what got you, why data centers? What made you choose, or what was your interest and piqued your interest?
Well, I had some experience with them on doing, I focused mostly on like sort of the smart cities really in the beginning in my career, and a quest and a journey to figure out effectively how to link the citizen, to a city was my background. And we really tried. I tried a lot, worked on a few projects. Most of them were total failures, just because it was really too early. But later, I was really glad, because I discovered that the need for these projects to be successful all sort of runs back to the data center, both in a financial perspective, because the financing, you need hard collateral, not kind of like these advertising contracts from JC or Clear Channel, or that's your marketing scheme, and these kiosks are going to be the tech, and then the light sensors and all this kind of stuff, or traffic sensors, excuse me, are what the city needs to buy. And the financing was never really super clear. And most of the cities too were broke, or they were broke in the sense they've already gone through budget, approvals, and they don't have any more money to spend. And they sure as heck aren't going to buy some strange camera system that you're pitching with the little bit of money they do have, especially, when, there's the city's not like New York or these large ones that can take risk, right? Which is most cities. So all of it really led back to the data center. But I had come from renewable infrastructure and just buildings of LEED certifications and things like that. So my heart always lied really in renewables. And I was sort of had to learn the minimum, the minimums in and around the tech industries, in and around IoTs and things along those natures, to combine the real estate functions that was always sort of the missing gap of tech. So like, many people are trying to bridge the gap between, digital infrastructure, real estate, and power and data sort of together. What does that look like? How does it come together? And so the real estate development, we believe that the future is really truly green, everything certified power, as much of zero carbon footprint as you can possibly be, right? Really following hopefully the European models, right? And where these things are invented, and these types of products of the green nature. I think that's really the best global standard, which led us, for instance, to go to the German stock exchange, where everyone's held a little bit more accountable for things like that, and we like that. We're big regulatory guys, and we think supporting the United Nations SDGs and these types of missions, a lot of things like that Goldfingr's doing as well, is a really powerful thing that we think can couple. Okay, great. I want to be a company. I want to be more green, right? How do I do that, right? So many companies that want to get on this bandwagon. When we think that, we can lead in our areas of bringing this critical infrastructure in, the data centers and sort of the green power, and then the rest can help with the other developments in, specific areas and countries that either are limited by something further, expanding something, or something is being opened up and allowing them to expand. Or they're looking to reduce. That's different. Either way, it allows a poor country the same advantage as a large, country like the United States. And we're just we want to stick to our core principles, basically being smarter, green, and and secure. I think cyber is really the last thing you really want to make sure you have in today's market. On top of all these things, green or not, you've got to protect content. You've got to protect data. It is really a scary thing out there with all these hackers, and we really promote the securing of data too as well, and of course the green way. But that's unfortunately it's the world we live in today.
Great, thank you, Danny. So Andrew, if you don't mind, please tell us a little bit about your background and experience in data centers, and please.
Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thanks very much indeed for the opportunity to come and chat today. My name's Andrew Fitzmaurice. I'm CEO of Templar Executive, an international award-winning cybersecurity company based here in the United Kingdom. We have a sort of a different view of all this because we work a lot in the strategic space. We advise governments around the world on how to develop their cybersecurity strategies, and obviously data centers play a big role in how people access and use information. If we go back a few years, obviously, traditionally for data storage, and then obviously recovering from any disaster recovery or business continuity incident. But we found that as time's gone by and everybody's really embracing the digital agenda, and of course, pandemic was the best digital officer that nobody had to pay for when it came to actually moving forward people's agenda in the digital space. The role of the data center has become far more important in the ability to give real-time analysis and processing. In the past, we say the past, but it's only 4 or 5 years ago, if somebody had an incident, then actually you did have to wait those 90 days to actually get into the system and have a look at the logs to see if they've been hacked or attacked. And so from a cybersecurity and enterprise architecture point of view, we've been really watching the development of the data center. And if we tie that in blockchain, blockchain arrived in the UK 7 or 8 years ago, and to be honest, nobody really quite knew what to do with it. It was a brand new thing on the block, and everybody was very happy it arrived. But how actually people then started to utilize it to its greatest benefit was really a little unknown. And what we found over the period of the last few years, actually, that blockchain has started to find its uses, has got its advocates. But in order for it to work really well, the structures of data centers really need to change, and they need to become far more powerful and able to give that situational awareness that everybody needs. And obviously there's that international connectivity with the distributed ledger that you need to be able to update. And of course, if we look at the blockchain market, it's around about $2.5 billion at the moment. We are expecting by 2025 for this to be near 20 billion. So it really is a growth area. So if you are looking for data centers, you really do have to think about how you can scale it up. And if we look at the traditional data center, which is really the 3-level tree model, where you've got client to server, and then you've got a north-south flow of information. We're really now looking from leaf to spine, when you've got server to server across many data centers, each mining and approving those blockchain changes as they go through. And then you've got east to west migration as well. So this is going to take more computing power. And it's really interesting to hear about the green agenda, because it's obviously going to take more power in general. And there's been a lot of criticism about Bitcoin mining and how much power it uses. And there's some ethical and moral issues around that. I guess that if you're using the power to mine Bitcoin when actually we used to power a small town somewhere else, then perhaps there's some issues around that. But I know a lot of manufacturers are looking to reduce that the amount of power needed to do that. And of course, it is driving innovation in liquid cooling, for instance, for data centers as well, and how that's approached, asset management, it's capacity management, and virtualization as well. And just take an example, we're not promoting it, but the EZ blockchain smart box, for instance, which came out last year, which is a transportable one, had made some real innovations around cooling and power usage. 2,500 watts was the power for it to be able to do some very impressive mining. So from our perspective, as we see the use of blockchain getting more and more, it really comes back to the point just made about security. And so how do people access and utilize their information secure? And is it secure by design? So when innovation does come in and people do absolutely embrace it, is that innovation actually beneficial? Is it one which keeps people's information secure? Ransomware was a $2 billion business this time last year. It's now a $120 billion business. with absolutely 40 or 50 different families of ransomware active at the moment and being added to every day. And if we look at things like SolarWinds and other very successful attacks, which have been through the supply chain, which includes data centers, we've seen the ability for malware to live off the land and this big game hunting piece where it actually eventually gets into the data centers to lock them up as well. So when you do think, oh, I've got my backup, it's too late, your backup's gone as well. So it's a really interesting piece. Obviously, blockchain helps with security from that perspective, and it does aid and abet that. But when we leap on innovation, we still need to have that bit about security by design, because it's not something you can retrofit in any easy way, and nor in a cost-effective way. So we at Templar think about these things and support businesses and countries around the world developing their strategies to enhance all the fantastic innovation. But at the same time, we have the ESG agenda now, we have the green agenda, and we have to be mindful of that as well. Rob, you're on mute.
Sorry. Great stuff, Andrew. And so when you talk about security, so how are you able to verify if data centers and actually, for the security, make sure that the data, or how do people actually know that their data is secure? I've heard this question come up a couple of times.
Well, I think there are quite a few methodologies around how to build and construct a data center. Many of them are getting accredited, but it does come back to good old-fashioned penetration testing and other aspects like that. Some testing, some fail-safe, some really good, robust business continuity and disaster recovery exercises, where you really do throw the kitchen sink at the design and the data to make sure it's robust. Unfortunately, it's the same old story. It's normally people who make the mistakes and allow the bad guys in rather than the technology. And that is forever will be the case. Unfortunately, we just can't get the human computer to really work that well when it comes to securing data in the long term. So a lot of this is also about the procedures of using a data center, the guidance and how it should be used properly, and ensuring that those people who interact and utilize data don't end up accidentally compromising it. You can have a fantastic, absolutely top of the range bit of information communication technology and data center, but it's got to be people proof. And that is sometimes the more difficult thing to do than actually providing the technology.
Great, thank you, Andrew. So Juwan, I know you have some initiatives that you're working on right now in Africa. So why don't you talk a little bit about like the need and why the need for data centers in Africa right now?
Sure. So first, let me explain a little bit about my background. I am the founder and chairman of NexChange Group. We are a ecosystem-driven venture builder, and we are the co-host for this event. And my background is I spent 30 plus years investing in technology. So as an institutional investor from the Silicon Valley and investing from around the world, there was definitely a need because data was definitely increasing, and the storage for data is very important. Now, before I even go into what's the requirements and what we think the big trends are in areas like in Africa, I think it's important for the audience to understand there are different models for data centers. Okay, so there's a little bit of a definition I think is required. There are enterprise data centers, and these are built and owned and operated by companies and optimized for their end user. And there's an often term that's used in this industry, it's called a co-location data center. And this is a data center that most people are aware of. And company basically rents a space within the data center owned by others and located off company premise. There are data centers that are managed service data centers, which basically are managed by a third party on behalf of another company. And cloud data centers we're familiar with because this is where the data and application are hosted on cloud services like Amazon Web Services. And even there are modular data centers where that is a portable method of deploying data capacity. I think it's important that people understand the definitions of these because there are different trends that are taking place in the industry. And we believe that there are opportunities. These are different for these different segments. But what we're seeing and the opportunity in Africa, which is interesting, is that especially when we see what's happening in North Africa, we see that Alcatel already put together a submarine network that is construction that is called To Africa. It will connect 23 countries across Africa. Therefore, it's an opportunity that in terms of laying the fiber and the infrastructure, it will be available for service in 2023. Also, the leapfrogging effect of blockchain can be a very big impact on Africa. The amount of data requirements that is going to be put into place will definitely require a proliferation of data centers throughout Africa. And right now, Africa is one of the most underpenetrated markets in the world in terms of data centers. So the opportunity here in terms of putting the right players in place, having the right infrastructure in place, if those things are available, the opportunity is very significant in Africa.
Thank you, Juwan, for that. Philip? Is Philip still on?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah. Philip, why don't you give your background a little bit, introduction to and how you got into data centers as well.
Yeah, sure. So my background starts in 2016, basically. I've been working in blockchain since 2014 on and off. 2016, I had a successful business that I exited at the end of 2017 when Bitcoin went from, I think it was like 5,000 to 20,000. And then obviously we went down. And during the 2 years after that, I've been studying, different ways, different vectors of technology, such as AI, seeing how it can impact basically trading exchanges. And then, I met Danny Hayes at a party in Beverly Hills, actually, Mulholland Drive. And, he had this idea of green data centers. And ever since then, I've been obsessed with green data centers and seeing how we can connect our worlds together, basically. Managed services such as enterprise AI, blockchain, even, fintech application as well, trading, everything underneath the sun. And I guess, TerraScale started at the World Economic Forum right before COVID happened. And me and Danny actually pitched IBM on a clean energy trading system, basically trading tokenized energy on an exchange. And ever since then, just been data centers, green power, and it really, when I look back at it now, we're basically seeing into the future, because what we're seeing right now is a gradual trend towards, not a gradual, I mean, the Wall Street Journal just came out with the article yesterday, basically, Google, Amazon, all the big blue chip guys out there basically trying to suck up renewable energy projects, right? And, what we're doing at TerraScale right now is pretty revolutionary in that aspect, but also, I think we're a few steps ahead into actually implementing managed services such as blockchain, Hyperledger Fabric for supply chain management. Danny mentioned Fujitsu. They have a quantum technology that digitizes the process of quantum technology, so it won't be ready for commercialization for 30 years, right? And we can use all of this in blockchain. We can combine all of this advanced technology into that. So that's my background, and that's, I think the future, I think everyone kind of laid it out as simple as possible, is data centers will probably start getting smaller, and edge play will become an important part for regions such as Africa and other smaller developing countries. So I agree with everything that is being said right here.
And so, question. So, who would like to address this? So, how big is the market, and how for data centers, and how big is it? And the growth of data centers right now?
So right now, digital infrastructure is taking up 4% of the total energy supply of the world, which is about 204 terawatts in 2020. So you can see that it's taken a huge impact. I mean, people need to start really thinking about the total impact that it takes to build a 20 megawatt data center, right? It's 8,000 homes. So we need to find a way to offset that, not just, offset it on basically, what some of these blue chip companies kind of do. They offset their entire consumption with investing into green projects, right? What we really need to start doing is building, off-site, on-site renewable energy into this, next to these digital infrastructure, big data centers, and offset that rate on premise instead of, investing in renewable projects, which is cool. But I think some of these blue chip companies really need to take in consideration their carbon footprint and really start making a difference, because it's okay to do solar in Reno and having a big data center in Frankfurt, but once we start thinking about what we're doing to the entire grid, right? I think, I hope that answered your question. Danny, you can jump in too if you want to answer.
Then no,
But,
so
yeah, so the trend to put it simply is, if these big companies aren't moving to green data centers, they're going to be way behind on the curve. And also, creating these microgrids, basically on-site renewable energy with data centers, and creating your own basically grid. These big utility companies have something called shaping. So during say you're in LA and the regular price of power is 8 cents, right? During the surcharge, when people are using power, where there's a demand charge, right? So that 8 cents becomes 12 cents. But doing off-grid utilities for our on-site campuses, you cut that charge out. So it's actually cheaper to go green. And that's what I think people need to understand, that it's not just, the carbon footprint that you're decreasing, it's your actual cash flow, right? So it improves things, not just in the world, but on your balance sheet as well. And I think, big companies, big investment banks, they need to understand that. And I think they are. I think they really are.
So basically you're competing with the blue chip data centers, but so what differentiates you guys, or how do you guys have a competitive advantage? These larger, I think you called them yesterday, battleships, right?
We're good at the financing. That's really it. We're getting power. We're also very good at the real estate development side. Most data center groups are very good at the tech side and the designs, things of that nature. That they majoritarily take up REITs, which is really kind of funny because, for instance, we have about an $80 million piece of land, about almost 3 square miles in the desert, right next to Tesla's Gigabyte factory. We own that now. And who cares about $80 million piece of land when you have $3 billion worth of electronics sitting on top of it? You see what I'm saying? So the market itself isn't, and then the leases for a data center, they're 5 times 5 with rolls and extensions. The PPAs for power are 20 years. That doesn't even match underwriting requirements. That doesn't even make any sense. There's so many chicken and eggs that prevent data center development from correctly having. Then you got to have the leases up front. It's a really, really difficult endeavor. Then you've got all the really tough parts of power. That's not easy either. You're making hundreds of megawatts of solar panels can take years just to get the local power company to lay a transmission line down, which basically includes all of Africa. You see what I'm saying? So you've got to have cooperation from the power company. You've got to also buy the land somehow without having a lease or a power agreement or have it under control, which is next to impossible, right? And then if all of these magical things come together, you might have a project at the end of it too. It's really, really difficult. And there's a lot of regulations that prevent power and data centers being co-located together, which is why you don't see as much. It's actually sometimes illegal to own the power and the data center at the same time and sell one to the other. It could be considered against the law in many countries. And this is just the tip of the iceberg of the challenges that a lot of the guys come into. Then you got to protect it. And like the gentleman that was just speaking at Templar, I mean, that guy couldn't be more right. You really need all this stuff together. You need to sell the cyber together. You got to have the power together. It needs to be basically sort of one more easy package. And then the numbers can sort of be laid, at that point, kind of phase two. Data centers make a lot of money because not only are they under big demand, they're very valuable and they're long term. So we think that the market's shifting in a great way. And the green agenda that we got into this for, we have good timing. It doesn't mean that we're any better at building a data center than anyone else. They're actually quite simple. What we're all about, like helping our partners out and helping, sort of develop projects better. Sharing economics needs to be a little bit more there. Greed isn't always the best thing. That seems to be driving a lot of the market. You walk up to guys and they'll own the land, right? You'll never convince them to throw it into the project special purpose vehicle up front, even though they get paid a week later, and you'd have the chicken and egg scenario. That never happens. So there's so many things that really are mismatched because the market's now driving the need for, I'd say you've got really like ransomware and these types of things. This is a new problem that is becoming so bad. It is about as bad as it gets as the earth melting as we speak. Those two things, cyber and how you protect yourself, and how then the data center really comes next. I think these two things, green power and how you secure something and how something is stored, safely, is probably, I would say, the leading most important, who can solve these problems together in a simple way. So there, everybody can understand it, including me. Like, for instance, I'm a CEO of a green tech company that's starting with data centers, and I'm probably the least educated on data centers of the whole company. I got experts all around me, and everyone knows that. But I'm also the best real estate developer at the whole company. And I'm the only guy that can typically convince the dang debt guys to throw in the money, right? So it really just depends. You need a good team, and companies need to be more strategic, and others need to operate better together. That's one of the reasons I like Goldfingr. One thing you've done a really good job of too at Goldfingr is how we all got together here on this call. I got to meet Mr. Lee just a few days ago. Next thing you know, he's over in Dubai. And if you don't bring the world together like what you're doing on a platform like yourself, no one will ever know about somebody else. It's sort of like a guitarist and wondering, and plays 23 hours a day. Well, dang it, get him in a band, right? Yeah. No one will ever hear of him, right? And it's really important to bring people together, especially with COVID and all these things, because it's really restricted our travels. It's really tough on business development. And now the market's really hot, and it's making it really difficult to get in with some of the banks or new territories. So none of these things are any less important than the other. And I think that in order to solve some of these really big problems, whether it's a data center being the beginning of this, that the follow-on plans, great, the data center companies made their money. Well, what about cyber? What about that contract matching these things? What about what's best for the community in Africa? What about pairing food together? We want to get into data centers doing two things: putting a data center next to a hospital or medical clinic. So we're working with Harvard to do that. That's simple. Why not have all that real important data that needs to get back to the US government, in and around COVID, whether you believe in it or not, right? Well, for those that do, that data is very important, right? What about food? Why can't you put data centers and vertical farms together? Shoot, you bring that into Africa, they're the best farmers in the world. That's what they do best. And you could be exporting goods by fueling data. This type of circular type economies and more partnership and interlocking relationship, that's got to be there for the development front end of all business, or none of that stuff will matter, and we'll never catch up to the problems. It'll only inherently get worse. And so these types of agendas, whether we're right today on this call or tomorrow we need to go into Africa, or people always, of course, want to go where it's easy and it's safe to make money. We think that going into other markets along the coffee belt are the future of, basically getting the world together all the way through South America and Africa. Those are really the target markets. And that's why we wanted to really get involved with what we're doing here today. And we're passionate about what we do, but it's just as important for us all to get together on platforms like yourself, Rob, and getting to meet great other people and experts in the industry is just fantastic.
So let's talk a little bit about, you mentioned the circular economy that we've created, just, you know, here on the call. So, you know, I met you, Danny, through Goldfingr, and then and also Philip, and then Juwan's been, you know, we met years ago, became friends, and all developed relationships, right? And then and obviously, you know, everyone on this call is super connected. And then what happened, I think, if anything, during the pandemic, in some ways, has brought people closer, because they realize, hey, you know, even though we're remote, as opposed to, you know, and connecting virtually, that means we actually have to combine resources and efforts in different ways,
Sure.
right? You know, and Juwan is, you know, doing all types of stuff and very well connected, and one of the most connected people and reputable people on the planet in regards to blockchain and crypto. His vast experience in finance and in all types of different industries, and you know, over time we've been able to combine efforts for different type of initiatives to really give back in different markets and in different ways, right, to the not only the blockchain, you know, community and movement, but also and how that interrelates to data and at the end of the day, you know, making a difference with different types of you know, cultures and people, like, for example, in Africa, right, which solving problems for them for you know, right now. I know I used to do business in Africa. Part of the problem with, you know, is the lack of connectivity and speed of data, right? So same thing was in Dubai right now, right? It's
Let's say it sounds like Los Angeles. Just kidding. Sorry.
Yeah. So Juwan, so I know you're you know, doing a lot of stuff in Africa right now, and we'll be seeing you in person this next week in Morocco. But talk a little bit why you've chosen Morocco and why Africa. What's your what do you see there, Juwan?
Well, I think the most important part of doing anything in Africa is to find a very credible partner. Okay, so penetrating any market, especially the emerging markets, if you don't have the right partner in place, then it's really going to be very difficult, because you don't really understand the culture, the politics, getting things done very quickly. It's all the connectivity that we just talked about. So basically, our strategy was to find the best partner, legitimate partner. So we partnered with the Moderator Group, which is an African conglomerate that's in almost every major industry. And because blockchain is actually not a vertical and it's in every industry, we're able to think about all the very, very practical applications, and the use cases can be actually you know, provided by our partners. So really, our first step was to find the right partner. They're locally based in Morocco. Morocco is a very stable part of Africa as well. And now we're using that beachhead to also, through their connectivity, to reach out into other areas within Africa. So that was the major strategy that we had in place.
Fantastic. And so what do you see in regards to the next, let's say, 5 to 10 years in Africa in regards to blockchain and data centers and crypto, right? Emerging markets?
So when you look at what's happening in Africa, it's very interesting. There are very specific use cases in Africa for blockchain: agriculture, health tech, self-sovereign identity, the financial inclusion. And financial inclusion is not just about the underbanked, but financial inclusion can be creating an NFT that allows you to make $1,000, and all of a sudden now you're included in the economy. And this is inspiring many people in Africa potentially to be, you know, to actually earn something that can actually have a very demonstrative impact to their life. So we see blockchain is going to be one of the most significant things in Africa. In fact, if Africa doesn't adopt blockchain, we're going to fall another generation behind. So it's imperative that we create this movement. So our objective here, alongside the things that we already talked about, is that data centers is the critical part of the infrastructure that needs to be laid, because without, it's going to be very hard to grow this, the blockchain movement in Africa.
So yeah, so basically you consider like the data center is the brain of the blockchain per se.
Well, see, it's a required infrastructure that needs to be laid. Otherwise, how can you possibly develop all these projects in Africa?
And so talk about how does so how is blockchain related or integrated into data centers? So.
Well, I mean, look, data centers is basically storage, right? You have various different companies that require, require storage and also security. For us, we are trying to empower various different projects in Africa. They will need data centers in order to power this.
And so, Andrew, what are your thoughts on regards to the future of the next 5 years and data centers in Africa, and where do you see all this stuff going in regards to blockchain as well?
It's been an absolutely fascinating conversation. If only we could go for the solar power, because I live in the UK and there's no chance of that, I'm afraid. It's supposed to be a summer's day here, but it's cloudy and raining as usual. So I don't think it's ever going to be an option for us. I've just come back from Morocco, actually, as a guest of the Moderator group. And again, that's where we all connect together, I think, in this particular piece. And indeed, we've announced we're going to do a joint project on building a cybersecurity academy for Africa in Morocco. So very exciting, hot off the press, for all of Africa, to ensure that this security bit is built in. And I was just, I'm always reminded that in 2007, there was a massive worm cyber attack, and it was monitored quite successfully around the world. And it didn't really hit Africa at all. And the reason being is it was only hitting data centers. And then 2017, 2018, there was the WannaCry attack, and you saw far more effect in Africa as more data centers come along. Now, data centers are vital for the success of blockchain. And Mr. Lee's point is absolutely very well made. But that comes a risk. So you need to protect the exclusivity to that data. You need to protect the connectivity to that data, and blockchain will require that. And naturally, I would say this, wouldn't I? But whenever there's a fantastic new enterprise, the bad guys are looking over your shoulders as much as the good guys. Consequently, as we build out in Africa, which is a huge opportunity, it's a huge opportunity for good, but it's also a huge opportunity for some malicious actors to get involved. And we've seen that in the pandemic, haven't we? We've seen all the scams about fake PPE, about people giving money, the fake apps, which when you clicked on, it started to siphoning data out of your systems. We saw all those. And so it's quite interesting. The pandemic has put us all together. And I've spoken to people around the world I would have had to go on an aircraft to go and speak to. So it's been absolutely fantastic. As some of the earlier speakers said, it'd be good to actually get down and meet people in person again. And again, give us alternatives to having to use this system, because the more diverse a system you can use, the more secure you can make it, actually, and the more redundancy you can build into it. But in terms of just saying, how things are going to move in Africa, it is literally a greenfield site, no pun intended. And I think that it's just superb. But one of the reasons why Maurice Group and ourselves were so keen to get a cyber academy going was to ensure that when you're designing and building it from the start, you do have, sadly, but necessarily, an understanding how the bad guys can disrupt and get in, and you actually build all those safeguards as you go along. And they don't have to be particularly expensive, or it's some ways are just by getting the right policies about how you use things correctly and how you're going to roll them out. It's just so important. The other big thing about data centers, of course, which we have in Europe, which is a real difficulty, is about trust. So people will only trust in data centers if they think you're going to hold on to your data and it's used for their good. And that's always something that we have to bear in mind, that actually a data center can become, obviously, very, very quickly, if the general public or the audience using it decide it's not a trustworthy organization or company or data center. So, scandals about money and stuff will affect the citizen. And so actually, I don't really think I want to be using that. So again, keeping a clean sheet, if you like, from the cybersecurity perspective ensuring the citizen always has the trust. And governments only really work on the trust of the citizen. You know, that's what we trust them on. Companies, it's a bit different, but definitely on government. So if governments want to utilize this, they're going to have to make sure they build in that security, that they get all the expertise, almost like a multidisciplinary team that we've got on this, you know, all the way from real estate through to some real experts in blockchain. Then actually you can make a fundamental difference very quickly and easily, because you're covering off all the bases. You have an elegant solution that's cost effective, but it also meets the need of who you're trying to serve. What will fail is if we get an idea ourselves and try and shoehorn it into a group of people or a country who doesn't really want it or need it. You have to understand what the needs are and then build out from there and do that strategic work. You know, understand the landscape, what you're going to give them, why you're going to give it to them, and how quickly you're going to do it and how sustainable. But to answer your general question, I think it's a fantastic opportunity. And, you know, Marisa Group and the vision they've got, I think is absolutely superb, and they should be congratulated on that, definitely.
That's great. So Andrew, talk a little bit about the Cybersecurity Academy. What is that? What's that about?
Well, the cybersecurity, within the UK, we've worked very closely with our intelligence agencies, and we had a big incident ourselves going back a few years where we lost 25 million records of everybody's bank details and stuff, and it was a little bit of a watershed for the UK and how we approach cybersecurity and how we build it up. And so we've developed a lot of courses that we want to share. There'll be a real academic element to it. We're looking at a number of universities in the UK. We'll extend out some very good cybersecurity courses, MBAs and masters, but also just general business courses and also for individuals, e-learning, whole range of stuff. But in the UK, we work very closely with our National Cybersecurity Centre. And so all those courses are actually certified by them. All the trainers are certified by them. So you know you're getting a really good baseline standard. I mean, touch wood, the UK, you know, painted the target on its back a few years ago saying this is the place to come and do business. And, you know, per head of capita, we do more online engagements than anywhere else in the world. So, and so we've been pretty successful at defending ourselves as well. And we'd like to export that to our friends. So everybody knows, every country in the world deserves to be able to go about its business, you know, without interruption from other countries, serious organized crime, hackers, activists, you know, and that's what we're there to promote. So some of it's around, will be about how does an executive approach it, and others will be deeply technical courses as well. So very, very exciting. We're looking to start that well, we've started building it. We're looking to getting it operational towards the end of this year.
Fantastic. Thanks, Andrew. I'm going to back up. So you kept what rang to me when you were talking about before is about trust in the data centers. And so, Danny, you want to talk a little bit about? I know that we've had many conversations about trust in regards to why are you using, like, partnered with Fujitsu and IBM and so forth. You want to take the ball on with that?
Yeah, sure. So right now we're working with currently very heavily with Fujitsu. It's a large Japanese company that is time and time again a lot the most ethical, voted most ethical company, and I guess in their market, and which was really important to us on a trust level, if you're asking on that, and ethics, which is great, but it sounds more like on a technology and trust and cybersecurity. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah,
exactly. So we actually are working with two engineers that are currently from that space. One of them is Matt Ionelli. He's the founder and CEO of Notorian, and they do a lot of cybersecurity, and hopefully they're going to come and work on some strategies with us or help us pick, you know, which strategies to use around the world. And that's part of like our model at TerraScale is we don't try to be the best at everything. We try to stay sort of in our lanes. We see a lot of people that, like, for instance, if we can bring, for instance, the capital and maybe the real estate and the ability and the construction to build something, a lot of times you can then partner, for instance, with like Templar or others, you know, or other firms that are more specialists in areas, because you really want to offer the best customer experience to your customers, whether it be, and we're agnostic. We want to give everyone the same 7-star type situation from Africa or America. Like, why are we so much more special than South America or anywhere else, right? So we sort of really believe in an equal playing field, both in delivery. We think delivery is probably the most important thing for us. If you say you're going to bring something to the table, and today in today's market, transparency and over communication seem to work really well, at least for us. And we look for best-in-class partners to provide all cyber security and we think that should always be outsourced to firms that specialize in these things, because things are always changing. Ransomwares are getting, the hackers are getting stronger by the hour. You've really got to, I mean, if we're offering a data center and we can't provide the best of service, then we're only letting our clients down. We're not letting us down. And I think that type of mentality is not good. So we outsource everything when it comes to cybersecurity, and we have Matt Ionelli and a few other engineers that help us find those partners. And cyber is also different, probably, I would even say on a global scale, depends on where you are. Europe's probably got a lot of different requirements versus Africa, and Africa may have some different requirements than America and vice versa. And there's other territories that sometimes an American company can't even go into. And there's a few of those that we just won't go, like North Korea, for instance. We wouldn't do anything there, just because of the geopolitical situation. That's just because we're an American company. And so a lot of times with cyber too, it's best to, like, if we were going to go build a data center, say in Germany, right? We would look for definitely a European partner to assist us with not only the technologies and things of that nature, but who's really best in class in those areas, that understands that market and the best way to protect those local citizens, falling within the rules and regulations of the local area, which are different in each country, right? Sometimes a little extreme, but we're big fans of sort of overdoing it. We like to make sure that thing's really secure, triple check offline, and some of our clients, governments around the world. If you ever want to get into government contracts, especially in the US, you got to kind of have a double redundancy of everything with the data center. And hey, what happens if this power dies? What's next? We got to have a backup power of this. It's the same way with cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is such an evolving, terrible beast that we outsource every bit of that, and for good reason. We'll continue as well on something that's that important, because it's always changing, and you can't protect things more than overprotecting it. I can assure you.
Great. Thank you, Danny. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. I think we're out of time today, but it's been a pleasure learning from some of the top experts and basically in data centers and blockchain and what's coming on and right now with emerging markets and the next trends. So thank you so much, gentlemen. Thanks.
Well, thank you. It's good to meet everybody, and thank you for your time, Rob, as always. Take care, everyone. Let's stay connected, please.
Nice to meet you, Andrew.
Cheers.
Thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you.